Hey, I now reconvene the regular council meeting of Monday, October 21, 2024. Before we get underway, we'd like to acknowledge that this council meeting is being held on the homeland of the Ktunaxa people. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the regular council meeting of Monday, October 21st, 2024? Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray. Favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of Monday, October 7th, 2024? Mover, please. Councillor Brissette, Councillor Peabody. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll move right into the public hearing. Public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 465 of the Local Government Act to consider the following bylaws: official community plan bylaw, plan amendment bylaw, my apologies, number 4166 2024, and zoning amendment bylaw number 4167 2024. This public hearing is being held in person and electronically, with residents and interested parties being given the opportunity to express their views. This meeting is being broadcast live from the city's website, and there is a link on the home page that will take you directly to the meeting. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaws will be given an opportunity to be heard. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to the matters contained within the bylaws, and it is my responsibility as chair of this meeting to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. Members of council may ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public and not debate the merits of the proposed bylaws with individual citizens. Those of you who wish to speak concerning the proposed bylaws should, at the appropriate time, begin by clearly stating your name and address, and then give us the benefit of your views. You will be given 5 minutes for your presentation. I will call for presentations 3 times for each bylaw. Once the public hearing is closed, members of council cannot take any further input regarding the proposed bylaws, and will then deal with the bylaws during the regular meeting of council held after the public hearing. The first bylaw for consideration tonight is proposed City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4165 2024. The subject property is located at 2340 34th Avenue North. Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4165 2024 proposes to amend the land use for the subject property to from low density to tourist recreation. The purpose of the proposed bylaw is to facilitate development of a recreational vehicle park with up to 50 park model trailers. I will call on any members of the public who are in the chamber tonight to speak first. If you wish to provide comments, please come to the podium, provide your name and address before giving us your comments. If you are in line, if you are on the phone line waiting to speak, callers will be identified by the last 2 digits in their phone number, or if you have pre-registered, we'll call you by name. Please make sure you know which number you are calling from and listen for it to be called. When it is your turn to speak, you will be allowed to unmute yourself by pressing *6, and you will have your opportunity to provide us with your views. If you have not pre-registered and wish to speak, please press *3 on your phone to signal staff that you wish to address council. I will now call a first time for submissions. If anybody wants to speak from the gallery, up to the podium, please step up to the podium. In opposition to
They can't hear you.
All right, there you go. This is the second no CP amendment change in our area up in Panorama Heights. We had another one here approximately 6 months ago. And I guess I always question the value of having the OCP if it's constantly being changed. Now, this particular change is down zoning, I would say, going from residential zoning down to commercial. And with the proposal, as you mentioned, Your Honor, to bring in 50 park model RVs. This property, or the subject RV development, is going to be adjacent to my property as well as many of my neighbors up in the Panorama area. But further to that, you're taking out residential land for the future. It's been designated for future land development for the purpose of residential. And that's Cranbrook's future. I mean, this is prime residential land that we're talking about. And to take it out and put in an RV park, I just do not believe is appropriate. I know we're talking about 13.45 acres. They're talking about splitting the parcel up. However, I do not believe that in the future, any developer is going to come in and develop the remaining parcel of land, knowing that there's an RV park there. And I know there's a letter that came in the council's package from, from Westcor Developments. And I'm just summarizing a brief part of a sentence that was stipulated in there. And it says, "We certainly are not interested in connecting a trailer park to our developments under any circumstances." So I agree with that statement. I don't believe any developer in the future is going to want to come in and develop the other portion of property that is designated for R1, knowing that there is an RV park right next to it. The second point I wanted to address is revenue. By going down to an RV park, we're talking a significant drop in tax revenue. I know I've talked to BC Assessment. It's possible that they may consider assessing these park models, but it's not a guarantee because they're in a campground setting. I have a friend, and I'm going to just refer to this just for an example, who lives out in Eagle's Nest, out by Moye, in a park model unit, and she pays $100 a year for tax revenue, or her taxes. That's what she pays. And she further stated that it could go up as high as maybe $400, depending on the circumstances. So that's the type of tax revenue I expect the city can expect from this development versus, and I know there's no houses there now, but there may be and will be in the future, income of maybe, for what I pay, for example, $4,000 a year. And I know my neighbors pay a similar amount. So you're talking a big difference in tax revenue alone for having, RV park model homes versus regular homes. So I think it's very short-sighted thinking. If we're thinking we want to just grab some dollars now or get this park in there now just to get a few dollars, I don't think that's beneficial for the future of Cranbrook at all. I think if we wait, it might take 10, 15, 20 years, but that amount of tax dollars at that time will make up for this very quickly. I ran some numbers, but I'm not going to run through all that stuff right now. Also, the city recently ran a survey asking the public to provide comments and suggestions on how to save some money for the 2025 budget. Well, I don't know how, on one hand, the city can ask the public to save money, and then on the other hand, think about giving away tax revenue for a development such as this. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry.
1 minute.
All right, I had a couple more points. I'll pass those by. So I understand also that the staff are being advised or being asked to prefer a campground bylaw. And this would open the door and would this not open the door for maybe other RV parks to want to come into town? That's a question council can answer. However, even if you get a campground bylaw, that's not going to change the fact that it's going to reduce the revenue coming in, and it doesn't change the fact that the R1 is getting changed to C6. So regardless if you have a bylaw to change the campground stuff, it's not going to change that. The people that are living in the park right now, they're not going anywhere. They're not being evicted. but it's for others who are maybe thinking of wanting to come. There's lots of land outside of Cranbrook that can be developed for RV parks. It does not make sense to put in a land use that does not contribute back economically to the work that is, that the people have put into this by the people of Cranbrook. They've invested a lot of work and time for developing this stuff. And it has been also suggested by some that this proposal is a good opportunity for Cranbrook. I 100% disagree. The only benefactor of this opportunity is the RV owner developer, for it is they who stand to earn millions of dollars over the years, while the people of Cranbrook stand to lose millions of tax dollar revenue. I urge council to use its common good sense
Final
and vote
comment.
tonight to reject this RV development proposal.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Like to address that later on. First, I have this I'd like to say first. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Gary Woodward. I'm here today to request approval on a property zoning expansion of my RV park. A little bit about myself. I've been a citizen of Cranbrook since 1981. I've run a number of successful businesses, including the pawn shop and the current RV park. Through these businesses, I've been dealing with unfortunate people that have been down on their luck. In the last 4 years, I have noticed more people needing short-term solutions to their housing needs. The current housing situation in Cranbrook is really taking a toll on people. Example, prices of homes, rental rates, just the cost of living. Starter home in Cranbrook starts at $400,000. This housing issue is a national crisis. The proposed RV park can be a stepping stone to assist people while council and government continue to work on the strategies to resolve affordable housing crises that we have today. Examples of what I've seen in my current park that I've been running for 4 years. People staying while they're building houses. People saving for a home. People working on short-term construction projects in the area. Having family issues. And senior citizens have nowhere to go. The proposed campground will have the same facilities as my current campground has. Wash house, laundromat, potable water, sewer, power, telecoms, and internet. The proposed park will have a combination of short-term, hydro only, and long-term lots for full services. All infrastructure in the park will be the same as what you would find in a mobile home park. For emergency services, there will be fire hydrants and roads will be wide enough for emergency vehicles to pass. I also have snow plows and sand trucks on site for regularly maintained roads. My current park has rules, lots of them. For a couple examples, animals must be on leashes at all times. No noise, 2 vehicle rule per site. No working on vehicles in the park. No permanent structures are allowed, and permission is required for basic things like decks. They have to go through me or management. The proposed park represents 13 acres of the total 46 acres of approximately 25%. The other 75% will remain as R1. The zoning change is only for 13 acres, and the bylaw change is to go from 10 park models to 50 park models, as requested from council. I have agreed to put a covenant on the property to not allow basements, and I'm willing to work with the city to address any other concerns they may have. My existing park has been very successful with no complaints from neighbors, including Panorama, the city, police, or emergency services. I'm hoping to receive approval from the city today. This matter is time sensitive on the purchase of this property. I feel the development will assist Cranbrook in their housing crisis. With it, I don't know where people else will go. To continue moving this project forward, I request that council consider giving approval with the current bylaws in place today, as it has been proven to work in my existing park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further? The lady on the, it's fine, either one. Yeah, lady on the end there, please.
My name is Bunny Klassen. I live at the RV park. I had a home. I paid taxes in Cranbrook. The current economic situations mean that more people like me, I'm 72 years old, more people like me are becoming homeless. Travel the bush, travel the back roads. Please see how many people are living out there because there's nowhere to go. They're in RVs, they're in campers, they're in those little things you put on the back of your pickup truck, and they're in tents. What I've noticed over the 40 years I've been in Cranbrook is that you don't want to see us. You don't want to see the homeless. You want to move us out where we can't be seen. It's not fair. It's not. People need a place to go. As Gary said, we've got working people who are here for a month, 2 months, 6 months, sometimes a year. Around me are more seniors like me. I can count every trailer that I see around me. I've got 3 that are working people, 5 that are seniors, 2 or 3 that are homeless, and 2 or 3 that are disabled. In fact, many of us there are reaching disability levels. Please quit hiding us. I had a home. I paid my taxes. I worked all my life. And I've tried to do a number of things to help Cranbrook and her people. I don't know what else to say. We're not invisible, we're people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up.
Brighton Orr, 517 Fifth Street South. So as we face a housing crisis and the costs in BC, the province, the RDK, City of Cranbrook's done a lot to mitigate, try to change bylaws, make things work, temporary solutions. The problem with the lot up above the RV park in Sandor, the infrastructure is not plausible at a profitable rate for any developer. You can't put R1 there. Now, currently, if you look on BC assessments, you're pushing about $3,000 in tax revenue through there a year. With the upgrades, and if Gary does what he's planning, you're looking at least a $30,000 pull off that park in tax revenue a year. I just filled out a survey for the City of Cranbrook to see where taxpayers are willing to cut for shortfalls or have my taxes increased again 8%. The average shortfall in that survey was $37,000 to $42,000. Gary's tax revenue for his first year picks up that shortfall. If we continue to raise taxes at 8% a year, his taxes are going to go up at 8% a year, which means he's going to continuously cover at least one of the shortfalls the city's seeing in the budget. I have 2 young kids that I have to raise in town, that I have to pay for activities in town, that I pay for the recplex, we pay for what they do in town. To shut down one arena or make it a dry arena, that's something I have to deal with for my kids. But an extra $30,000 a year in revenue could be that difference. If it was developable land as is, it's a different conversation we could have. But as a contractor in the City of Cranbrook, I see that you can't develop R1 right off the bat without generating revenue from the property first. There's still 30 acres of property there to be developed for whatever the city's needs are as they move on. Currently speaking, with the housing situation, with contractors coming in and out of town, most of our local contractors aren't taking on civil construction jobs. Most of even the city work is coming from Copcan, Okanagan Aggregates, and a lot of out-of-town contractors. Those guys need somewhere to stay. We've lost 2 hotels to the housing crisis in the last year. Contractors are struggling to come and work in Cranbrook because A, we don't have enough suitable RV sites for the pipeliners and the guys that are coming through on LOA. And we don't have the hotel and the short-term rental space for contractors coming through. We get phone calls from guys we work with all the time. Is there a place to stay? Can we get something in Fernie? Is there an RV park in Jaffrey? It might not be a perfect solution for everybody, but it's a solution to a lot of the problems as small businesses and larger businesses coming into town and for the people of Cranbrook. When we bought our house, it was 150,000. If you wanted to buy my starter house, it's 450 now. You can't do it. Our taxes have been up every year. So for young families, I'm 32 years old, you can't do it. My wife's got a good job and I got a good job. You can't buy a house here right now, but you can start somewhere, which is what he's offering. For seniors, they're getting priced out of their houses. They can't afford the taxes anymore. City of Kimberley just cost a 72-year-old lady $17,000 to upgrade her sewer main that she never planned on. They're selling their house next year. They don't know if they're going to be able to stay. That's what seniors in town are facing. And for $700 a month, Gary can provide somewhat of a solution till they're back on their feet or till they know where they're going to go. During COVID, I watched numerous customers go homeless, waiting on the city and the RDK to give them occupancy for things like siding on their house, because the material supply was so short that the city didn't have a way to deal with changing the building code to allow people to move into their house when they just strictly couldn't get things like siding. People couldn't get stoves. They couldn't move into their houses. They lived in Gary's Park because they built a house at Wildstone, Shadow Mountain. They had nowhere to go because they couldn't move in because the city couldn't deal with the challenges it was facing.
1 minute.
There's no fault on anybody, but the province is doing everything it can do to change the way things work so we can solve. And I think the city of Cranbrook needs to do that too. And I think this helps solve a lot of the issues that the taxpayers, council, city hall, the guys in public works, help solve a lot of the problems we have. Maybe not forever, but short-sighted or not, it's an option. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Further? Anybody from the gallery? Oh, okay. The lady in the back.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jackie King, and my address is 286 Mission Crescent. In favor of the RV park, and a little about me. I have been in Cranbrook since '97. Gary is a close family friend, and I'm in real estate, and I'm going into my 4th year with eXp Realty. So, yeah, I guess what I just like to share is that I have worked even just in this last year with clients who have either used the RV park as a stepping stone to get into the housing market. So this year I worked with 2 professionals that used the RV park. They saved up enough money and became first-time home buyers. So that was, I think, really special. And adversely, like people that have had to sell their property and needed like a short-term solution for living have looked to go to Gary's RV park. I've actually a couple of them, and the wait lists are quite long. So yeah, I feel like if there was more spaces, it would be really beneficial. And it's been a pretty big integral part of like a housing solution. And I didn't really come up with like stats and stuff about, you know, like The benchmark price today, actually, when I looked from our Association of Interior Realtors, was 548,000. So I think like people have spoke on it, like affordability is like really, really tough right now, and it takes a lot to get into a house or a property. But I also think that like it's a great way, the RV park is a great way for people. It's maybe not as conventional, but it's not really a conventional time. And I just think I really admire the fact that someone's trying to come up with a solution and keep people in our community that are, I feel like, hardworking members of the community. So yeah, I just am in favor of it. Sorry if I was nervous. I've never done this before. And I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Further from the gallery? Anybody on the phone or online?
So Mayor Price, we had 2 registered callers. We only have one that seems to be in the queue. So it's Clay Richardson. You want to go ahead, Leon, if you're down there?
Mayor and Council,
Yes, we can hear you.
my name's Clay Richardson and I live at 2330 33rd Avenue North in Cranbrook. Respectfully based on recommendation by City Planning Department, this bylaw change request should not have proceeded beyond first reading. Why? Basically, the loss of tax dollars to the taxpayers of the city. Developed as proposed on the 14-acre parcel, the city would receive approximately $10,000 in taxable revenue. And I got that approximate from talking to one of the city planners. Remaining R1 zoning, this 14 acres could accommodate approximately 50 city lots. Once again, the approximate figures from the city planner, with a potential for approximately $200,000 based on $4,000 of taxes lot per year. I have a friend who lives in Kokanee Court. Drove around his crescent, which contains 31 mixed double wide and single wide manufacturers homes on approximately 2 acres of land, maybe less. If this 14-acre parcel were held as R1 and developed even as a manufactured home park, this would accommodate 200 homes for taxable revenue to the taxpayers of the city based on $2,000 per home of $400,000 per year. The proposal by the developer to put in 50 park model units, if taxable at all, depending on BC assessment, would only create $500,000 of taxable revenue after 25 years. This is based on $400 per unit per year. Council has asked staff to create a new bylaw for RV parks. No matter what is created, this will still not bring in the revenue if developed as R1. From Willowbrook Drive to 30th Avenue and up Panorama Road, there was a mix of single homes, manufactured double wide, single wides. Let's continue on with the aesthetics of this neighborhood and develop as R1 that would contribute significantly more to the tax base than what is proposed as an RV park. What's proposed is only a Band-Aid fix. We have a housing issue in the whole country, but it's going to take some time to fix. BC Ministry of Housing does not recommend these developments, nor does your planning department. A recent survey by the city asking residents to suggest savings for the 2025 budget. I suggest don't throw away $200,000 or $400,000 taxable income by allowing this development to happen. With regards, thanks. Clay Richardson.
Thank you very much for your comments. Gentleman in the back, in the front row there. Yeah.
Hi there, my name's Stu Clow. I live in Gary's Park right now. And all I want to say is I've submitted a letter, and has that letter been circulated to council? Yes, you had it. All right. Only thing I want to reply on then, what's new, I guess, is I hear the talk of getting $400,000 in taxes in 25 years from now, or 10 years, or whenever somebody goes and builds a big subdivision there, which is kind of, you're not going to see that for a few days. I'm 72 years old. I live in British Columbia for 7 months, and I live in Arizona for 5 months in another trailer down there. I live in my trailer here, and I have for 10 years because it is mine. It smells nice. It's clean, and it's not in a basement suite that stinks. It's got radon gas that somebody's dog puked on yesterday, and that I have to look after for the whole winter. And it floods or whatever. Anyhow, there's no way I'm going to go. I'd rather kill myself than go into a basement suite. In 10 years from now, hopefully I'll be dead, and you can have my spot, and you can take and make a $2 million house, or ever how big a house you want then. But right now, like this lady said, you need a place to live. We all need a place to live. And people in Cranbrook are no different than anywhere else. I drive all over the place, and you drive down through the States, and there's the same issue as what Gary's got. There's people living in, obviously living, they're insulated in RVs all along the road. They're in Alberta, they're in Saskatchewan, they're in Manitoba, they're in Idaho, they're everywhere because people have nowhere to live. And if you don't approve the park, you don't give people a place to go, it's kind of like homelessness and prostitution. You can move it down the street, but it's going to stay there, and it probably is going to get worse. In Montana, where I was a couple of weeks ago, they now have an issue. They closed the parks. They don't let them have a park. People take old beat up trucks and old beat up trailers, and they just go park on your street, quite frankly, and anybody's street. There's a big long row of old beat up trailers and stuff. And the city council, like they do prostitutes and other people, they don't want homeless people. They move them along, but there's nowhere for them to go. I happen to have a decent pension. I'm okay. I can go to Saskatchewan tomorrow. It doesn't matter to me. But what matters to me is that I like Cranbrook, and I do contribute to the taxes here. I play golf here. I eat my food here. I buy my own food. I get my hair cut here, such as it is. And I buy my clothing here. I do what I can in Cranbrook to support it, and I have for 20 years. So all I'm saying is don't count all your chickens with this $400,000 you're going to get in 25 years. You can go and bulldoze my trailer park in 5 minutes and start putting houses in there. I've built houses before too. It's a very simple process. And so in 15 years, go for it. But let me live out my little quiet life for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentleman in the front.
Thank you, Mayor. Richard Wake, 3865 Con Road, out towards Wycliffe. I think some of the things that haven't been touched on, and certainly when Gary was talking, was the long list of people that are just looking for a tourist kind of destination. His original park started out as that, and of course it's morphed into something quite a bit different just because of the situation that we're dealing with nationally. But that said, I mean, the hope would be at some point, some of these strategies that the governments are trying to implement with regards to affordability and housing will take place, and then maybe this turns into a proper RV destination park. And we've heard lots about, oh, where the tax base and all that kind of stuff, but I think what we're forgetting about are the dollars that come into communities when people stop and stay in their RVs. And right now, there is nowhere to stay, right? He gets constant calls all summer long and has to turn them away because there's just nowhere for these people to go. So obviously they don't stay here. They don't spend their dollars here. They don't participate in any of the events and things that are going on in the community. So I think it's a loss at this stage from a revenue perspective. The other part of it too that we heard was you're taking away from the RR1 pool. It represents what, 1% or something like that? It's not a big significant amount of property that's getting removed from the RR1 pool of Cranbrook. And so is it a stepping stone? Absolutely. I think it is. Hopefully it's a short-term measure. Hopefully it's one of these things that people can eventually, save up and buy houses and whatnot. But for the time being, I think it's, let me use a word that was used in the task force review. It's out of the box thinking, okay? It is. And that was part of the recommendations from the task force, where you had to have a flexible OCP to accommodate things like this. And then it's out of the box. I mean, we hear from the province, oh, people living in trailers is not good. Well, but it's a reality. Go down to Vancouver and walk around the streets. You see RVs everywhere. And these are working class people that have nowhere to go. That could happen here. And it is happening here because like you said, you take a drive out in the forest roads and it's shocking. It's truly shocking what's happening. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any further comments from the gallery? Gentleman in the back.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Gavin Thomas, 506 6th Street South. This year, I spent my first year as the operator of the newly reopened Mount Baker RV Park. And so initially, that's why this caught my attention. I seen RV Park. So I was like, I told my wife, I'm just coming to listen. I'm also a real estate agent, a managing broker at a real estate brokerage, and see a lot of people trying to fulfill their housing needs. So this whole thing has got a lot of gears turning. I just want to, I guess, confirm from our end that there is an abundance of people looking for a housing solution. We definitely faced a lot of that. We're running the RV park as short-term tourist stays, so we weren't able to help. And I think the intent of the Mount Baker RV Park helps fulfill the people passing through town, tenters and that sort of thing, and I think that's great. I'm working on the yearly reports for it, but it was not running at max capacity, nowhere near it. There's lots of room for more people to come. We think it'll continue to grow. So in terms of RV park in that sense, I don't think there's a huge need right now to open up more spots for that type of thing. The real estate agent mind, this is zoned residential, this land. And it sounds to me like the purpose is for it to be residential, but affordable, reasonable housing. And so there's a bit of a conflict going on. The tourism zoning would allow that to happen, but the intent is for residential. And I agree we need solutions to this. I don't have the answer, but I just feel like there's room somewhere in the middle to have a zone or something that's more allowed and organized for that sort of entry level or baseline housing. As much as they'd be park models, to me sounds like it's basically going to be a permanent residential situation. I think it's great that he's got opportunities for the people that need that, and I'm for that. The term RV park for me is very distorted at the moment. So I just wanted to point that out, that there is some short-term accommodations. There's lots of room to grow still. We hope to get that going more. But I also agree that the people that need this more for residential, whether temporary or permanent, is there. So I would just encourage everyone to keep working together to find a solution for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from the floor? Gentlemen.
Steve Dunton, 35119 Christina Place, Abbotsford, BC. Come up special for this meeting. Westcor owns the property next door. One of our affiliates does. We also share a long border with the park and have no trouble with it. I'm not for or against this, so I'm not going to be any help to you much. But what I would say is this, is number one, I've written something. I'd like you to look at it in whole, not in part. So I know I can get quoted out of context. My whole thing is here to help, not to be a talking point. So please read the whole thing. However, what we have here is the same problem we have right across this country right now. And we have a real trouble with housing. And the problem is putting a C in front of land up on that hill, making it commercial, opens the door and closes the door for residential. And I think staff tried to say that, and I understand what they're trying to do. Ultimately, planning is supposed to be a 50-year process. We shouldn't be sacrificing for short term. But we have a huge problem short term, and I acknowledge that. So my suggestion today, and I did talk to the mayor today, and I appreciate him talking to me, and I have talked to the proponent, Gary, and I thank you for having a chat. We agreed to disagree on some things, and I agree with that. That's okay. However, there is a solution here, and that is to give a text amendment to the existing zone for this particular use. I said for 6 years. The mayor corrected me. It's 3 years and 3 years. So it's a 6-year process. What it would allow us to do is circle back in 6 years if we need to put the zoning in place at that point. The other thing I don't understand about this proposal that Gary has is he's got much more density in the acre and a half or 2 acres he has right now than what he's proposing up there. And if we're going to get a solution and we're going to make a temporary solution up there, let's do it right. You can easily put 130 units up there, not even to the density that they have right now. And so I don't know if there's a cap at 50 because he's committed to that and we find we need 60 tomorrow when he's back, or whether we just simply make this a temporary adjustment to the existing zone. It's a compromise. It means that the councillors don't have to turn it down. They can embrace it, probably unanimously. And we're not really looking at a rezoning. We're looking for a text amendment, temporary use. And I know that hasn't been talked about, but I've seen it work very, very well. And in 6 years' time, if Gary still owns it, it's still being run great, and he comes back, he says, I want permanent, okay. I don't see that it's a downgrade for us to do it that way. What I do see is if you take residential land, right now Cranbrook has lots and lots of residential land. And everybody knows there's all kinds of residential land. And I was in Parksville when that happened back in the 1980s, building houses. And I was buying lots that cost $26,500. I was buying them for $10,000, some as low as $3,500 because the lenders just wanted out. I knew that was going to end. And when it ended within about a 2-month process, and lots were 30,000 and everybody fell off their chair. And Cranbrook is at that crossroads right now. There is an increase coming in the existing lot base because you are running out of lots. And so I'm not opposed. I'm not particularly for it. Just because it's a change of an OCP change on a designation that was thought out and it would certainly, with our lands there, developed with these lands, could make a great future for the residential in Cranbrook. It is not Shadow Mountain, it's in town. It is not Wildstone, it is in town. And so you don't have a lot of that. I know that the thought is you do. I don't think you do. Not for the growth that has to come. And I say the growth because no one can afford, families can't afford houses in the Lower Mainland. They can't afford them here right now, but they can't afford them right across BC. Hope that helps.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll just get through them. Question. Yeah. Councillor Peabody has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve brought up a point about doing the tax amendment to, it sounded like to accommodate more lots. I'm just wondering if staff wanted to speak to that, if that's something that's worth looking into, or if that's something that's even able to be done.
So, Mayor and Council, so I wasn't privy to any of these discussions or any what was being discussed. I'm not entirely sure what was meant by sort of how a text amendment would work. It sort of sounded kind of a cross between a text amendment and a temporary use permit, perhaps. But the only text amendment that would change would be just, as it stands from today, it would be just increasing the number of park models. The actual density of recreational vehicle park, lot parcels, I guess I don't call them lots, but spaces would be based on, the planning that they're going to develop for the park and the minimum requirements for space. And so there is no kind of a density limit that way. The only restriction that's being proposed or increased here is the number of park models. So, but beyond that, I wasn't privy to the other discussions, so.
Okay, thank you, Rob. And sorry, a quick question from the mayor. I'm just wondering if you could explain the temporary use a little bit. That was, it sounds like you and Steve had a conversation about having the 3 years and then the other 3 years.
Yeah, for temporary use, council can approve 3 years, and then they can come back for an additional 3 years. And then that's the end of it. I believe, Rob, am I correct on that?
That's correct, Mayor. So basically, the way temporary use permits work is, under the legislation, you can issue them for a maximum of 3 years with one renewal. So I believe it's 6 years total. That option wasn't discussed with the applicant. I mean, he brought in an application to change the designations, and that's what we've been working with. And certainly staff hasn't explored or even discussed how a temporary use permit would work in this situation. It's something we'd have to look into.
Yeah, but it sounds to me like with, the significant investment that Gary is looking at doing into this property with roads and fire hydrants and electricity, that to do that for the possibility of 3 years doesn't seem realistic.
I suspect that would be, sorry, Mayor and Council, I suspect that would be a significant consideration, given that any outlay of costs and money with sort of no guarantee at the end of 6 years might be a tough sell. Like I said, that it wasn't even brought up because from our earlier discussions working with the applicant and helping him prepare this application and discussions, that wasn't really something that was put on the table. And as you know, we've had this discussion many times, but zoning doesn't have a timeline. So the only way that would be that sort of temporary use permit. But again, that would be something that the applicant would need to do his number crunching on to see if it's viable. And then, of course, like I said, after the 6 years, this council's not necessarily here anymore. And then any renewal after that, it's a 50-50 crapshoot, I guess, is what it could be. And so, yeah, the outlay of expenditures, I suspect, would be something that he'd have to work on to see if it would be a risk he'd be willing to take.
Great, thank you, Rob.
Yeah. So the motion on the floor is the OCP amendment bylaw. Yeah. Anybody else on the floor like to speak? Gary?
Thanks again. I believe everybody's finished talking. A couple things I'd like to say is thank you very much, Doug, for your contribution to your taxes, but I do pay a lot more than you. The substantial amount of the tax would go up on the property as it's developed. So not so much on each unit as they were said, the ones in Eagles Nest pay $100 a year. My taxes are a lot more than that, and they will go a lot more on this property. The gentleman on the radio there said about.
Just point of order, Your Worship, this is not about debating the points that were made. This is about bringing up information. So this is not a debate.
Thank you very much for that. That's true. Yeah. So what we're talking to is the amendment, the zoning amendment.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was
On the
just trying
changes
to
zoning.
include to some of the questions that were asked, because that's all. So not answer those?
It's not a debate. So it's to bring up information. You can say you pay more taxes, but I'm sorry, Your Worship, I'm taking your chair.
Yep. We'll move on.
Okay, one other thing was Steve's thing there. I'm not quite applying for that, to do that, because to spend this kind of money on a property, as Mr. Peabody said there, is crazy. Like Mr. Vague says, if there's a new council and they turn it down, I'm on all that money. So, but in the future of this, there's still a substantial amount of the property to go into R1. And we have to remember that this property is not prime residential. It is landlocked for one. Until someone develops around it, you can't get to it. So coming off of my place, and I'm only doing a small piece of it, is basically all I'm doing. So I just want council to understand that this is where we're at. It's just landlocked, small piece of it. leaving a lot of it still in R1.
Thank you. Anybody else from the floor? Have we got anybody else on the phone line or online? That was first time for submissions, so I'll now call a second time for submissions. Nothing. I will now call a third and final time for submissions. Hearing no further comments, I now close the public hearing for the proposed City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4165/2024. The next bylaw for consideration tonight is the proposed City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4166/2024. The subject property is again located at 2340 34th Street North. Zoning amendment bylaw number 4166/2024 proposes to amend the land use designation of the subject property from residential zone R1 to tourist commercial C6. Like the OCP amendment, the purpose of the proposed zoning amendment is to facilitate the development of a recreational vehicle park with up to 50 park model trailers. I will now call a first time for submissions. Nothing on the phone? I now call a second time for submissions. Finally, I'll now call a third and final time for submissions. Oh, gentlemen. It's all the same. Yeah. Nothing? Okay, hearing no further comments, and I'll close the public hearing for the proposed City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4166/2024. Thank you very much. We'll now move into delegations. We have two delegations tonight. First up is Mario Perotti from BDO Canada, who will be making a presentation regarding council's financial responsibilities.
Mr. Mayor, maybe just for the interest of the gallery, this bylaw will be dealt with after the delegations, just so they know where it sits in the list.
But you fine with the move in the order? Hey?
It wasn't about moving the order, we're just letting them know that there's two
Oh,
delegations,
yes, it
then
will
this
coming
comes
up
up.
after the delegations, we'll go straight into bylaw. Thank you very much for that. Yes. Yep. Hang in there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It's great to be here in person, and I thank you for indulging me while I'm here in Cranbrook to be able to see everybody face to face. Now, I do have a slide presentation. Are we able to bring that up on screen? So the purpose of today's presentation, though, I've been discussing this with your CFO and talking about just this is a good time as you're heading into budget deliberations and that regular part of your cycle, that this would be a great opportunity to talk about just reminding Mayor and Council, this is your roles and responsibilities as it comes to financial reporting and talking a bit more about some of the best practices that are out there and just hopefully so that'll enable you to have some more good, robust discussions as you enter into the process and maybe talk about some changes amongst yourselves if you feel that it's necessary. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is just understanding everyone in this room's responsibility in terms of what the financial, when it comes to financial reporting and what you have. Thank you. And then we're going to talk a bit about some of the financial reports and some of the things that just specifically for Mayor and Council, because, you know, although Mayor and Council is here to govern, there are certain responsibilities through the community charter that you have in terms of the financial reporting. So we want to make sure that everybody's aligned in terms of what you have. So if we start with the hierarchy of responsibility, you know, a lot of what we have on this slide is outlined in the community charter, and it all starts, as you know, with Mayor and Council. The powers, duties, and functions of a municipality are exercised and performed by its council. There's specific provisions in the charter that govern that you are responsible for approving your budget. You are responsible for approving your external auditor, being myself and my team. And, also approving the financial statements and having that oversight as a governance body. Some councils choose to have an audit committee, which is a subcommittee that you can have that where council can delegate its authority down to a smaller working group to work through the financial statements. But ultimately, those two functions are the same, is that you're there to provide that oversight. And we're going to talk about what that means as we move through. And then we move to the CAO. You have one employee, and that is the CAO, who is responsible for maintaining the staff and overseeing management function and making sure that the directions of councils are implemented. But that doesn't diminish the role of the finance officer, because there are certain aspects that are there that it is the finance officer's responsibility to make sure that all the money has been received, to make sure that all funding has been received and safeguarded, to invest in municipal funds, to make sure that the records are accurate. That falls under the finance officer. So while we have the CAO that is ultimately, and you're very familiar with that role, as an accountant, I always want to make sure that we understand the role of the finance officer, because there are some defined items in there, obviously reporting to the CAO, but certain duties that are part of the charter. So when it comes to the roles and responsibilities, the municipal staff team are responsible for preparing the financial statements, including any note disclosures, including any judgments that goes into them, and making sure that that final document that you receive on an annual basis is there and it's accurately reported. And also, they're responsible for making sure that there's an internal control system within that to make sure that all the information, if you can appreciate the thousands of transactions that flow through on a weekly basis, the city of Cranbrook, making sure that there's a good process that all those transactions are recorded accurately so it aggregates up into the statements. Your role is to provide oversight, and whether it's over the financial reporting, it's the financial disclosures, and understanding what some of the financial risks. And we'll talk about what we mean about financial risks and internal controls in a couple of slides. And it's also to remember that I work for you. My team and I spend a lot of time working with your CFO and her team, but ultimately I am an agent of council and appointed by council under the community charter. So that's why it's important for us to have that ability to have an open dialogue that way. My job is to make sure that we're performing an audit and make sure that we're also reporting to council during the planning and execution phases of the audits. And one of the things that we're talking about as well is that, I will be coming back and speaking to you in January likely, where we're going to talk about here's what we're planning on doing the audit, so you have a bit more of a purview to what we're going to do to help discharge our duties. And also we want to make sure that we're providing commentary on internal controls, best practices, and that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about today as well. But this next slide I think is important in terms of when you talk about my role, and it's the external audit versus the internal audit, because the two roles often get blurred, and there's a bit of an expectation gap between the two. As your external auditor, we come in and we examine your accounting records. We can't look at every transaction, but we look at what management is recorded and make sure that it's been built up. And the objective is to make sure that we can make a determination if the statements present fairly the results of the city of Cranbrook for the year that we're auditing. And again, we talk about suggestions on improvement controls, and we want to make sure that we're independent of the city of Cranbrook. Now, oftentimes when I get questions when I'm saying up in front of council, they're more focused on what you have when it's an internal or performance audit, where it's an examination of a program. And the example that comes up all the time for some reason is, are we doing enough with our tipping fees? And, how do we compare on that? That's outside of the purview. Our role is to make sure that all the tipping fees have been recorded and reported in the financial statements. And if we see something where it's out of line, we'll tell you. But the primary role is to make sure that what's happened is recorded accurately. And then with the internal audits, that's also looking at value for money, finding efficiency mechanisms, and you can have that done by somebody internal to the organization or external. So what does this mean for you? And so when we look at council's oversight, I've posed some questions on here, and one of the things I want to highlight is that this is a stock presentation. I've done this to a lot of councils, but I'll add color commentary that's more custom to the city of Cranbrook, but I wanted to keep this as more of a stock presentation so that maybe there's some language that you haven't heard, that maybe it trips something as you're moving through the cycle of the year. And so when you look at it, do you have the appropriate data to assess the performance of the city of Cranbrook? So you think about what reporting you're getting, you get your annual financial statements, you get your budget reporting packages. Is there more? Is there less that you want? I know that, we've been speaking about, there's always a good time, especially now that we've come out of COVID, where we can start looking and going, the past 5 years have been irregular in terms of operations for everybody in the province. Now's a good time for us to revisit what you get for reporting, and maybe there's a change, and maybe we're happy with what it is, but it's important to look at it from that lens. We ask about, are you aware of the top internal control risks to the city of Cranbrook? Love it when auditors talk that way, but I mean, the biggest thing to think about is if something were to go wrong, where are the biggest areas where it could go wrong, and do I know what it is? We had this public hearing where we talk about housing and a lot of these numbers that are coming in, and I think it's great that those items are being deliberated because it gives you that context in terms of what's happening. If you're undertaking major capital projects, that's another area. Do you understand the risks of if procurement doesn't get it right? And the flip side is we look at how frequently does management report to you on internal controls? I doubt that they come to you and say, here's our report on internal controls, but they do come to you and say, we've tendered this project pursuant to our policy. We're bringing this forward in accordance to our policies. And those are the types of things where they're reporting to you on internal controls, even though it might not be worded that way. That's really what they're doing, is that they're telling you, we have a policy on this. And if you have something that's being brought forward and there's no policy attached, you're wondering what the due diligence is, you can always ask, well, do we have a policy? Should we have a policy? And those are the types of things that when you're looking at oversight, what it means to you. We also look at council needs to be looking at risk governance. And so, how detailed is your knowledge of the risks facing your organization? And really, it's the risks facing your community because it's one and the same. And so, do you know what's coming up? Do you know what your capital needs that are going to be coming in? Do you understand what's happening in the 5-year capital plan and be able to ask the questions to help you make good decisions in terms of approving budgets, changes in tax increases, listening to the survey that has been put out in terms of how we can save taxation? All of those tie into your risk governance and the reputation of the city of Cranbrook. And how frequently does management report to you on this? The fact that you're doing community engagement and getting those reported to you, that's what management is doing when they're providing you with those reports. So again, we're hearing different ways to think about it, but really a lot of what management is doing highlights these areas here. Sorry, I'm moving quickly because I know there is a lot more on the agenda, but I also want to make sure that there's an opportunity for questions in the end. So that's what everyone's role is. And so then we get into what is the purpose of financial reporting? So whether you're getting your budget book, whether you're getting your annual financial statements, the objective is to communicate information that's useful to council, management, and your community, and to make sure that you have a transparent way to be able to go and show how you're assessing management stewardship of your financial assets, of your infrastructure. And this allows you, if you have good reporting, to make sure that you have good government of the community. You're providing, you know what services you're providing, you're getting reporting on the costs of those as well. And it comes back to that stewardship. But then it's also giving you information about the economic resources you have, how much you have in your surpluses and your savings. All of those are so important for you to be keeping an eye on as well. Management's responsibility for financial reporting is one of the key documents also in the financial statements that is there. And it's an often overlooked document, and I wanted to highlight this for you because this document is one that's in your audited statements. It talks about what management's responsible for, what council's responsible for, and how me and my team interact with everybody throughout the process. The document is signed off generally by council and by the CFO. I know that hasn't been done in the past, but that's one item that I've recommended that we change so that we have that there to acknowledge that everybody has a role to play. And there is no prescribed language, but, you know, your report on that is actually along with the best practices, so I have no concerns there. The audit report, when we're moving on through the financial statements, is also an important document because this tells you and the community what I do and what my team does and what it covers and what it doesn't cover. So again, really important document there. We won't go through all the bullets there, but it really outlines what we do to help you govern the city of Cranbrook. So when you get your financial statements and when I'm presenting to you in May on the final ones, take a look at the slides, these next couple of pages before it comes back, and just coming back to, you know, asking yourself when you have these statements, do they make sense? Are the questions that you have, are you able to ask those questions? And do you understand what some of the complex accounting and reporting issues are? Last year, we accountants put a $4 million liability on your financial statements called asset retirement obligations. And we spent a bunch of time talking about it because it was new and it was complicated. So that's why we spent that time on there, because we want to make sure that you're getting that understanding of what those items are. And then, you know, looking at what's routine, what's not. If you had a major capital project in this year that went sideways, how is that reported in the financial statements? And we hope that you never have to deal with that. But if it does happen, you want to make sure that the statements tell the story there. And so the last couple slides before I open up for questions is just, you know, when I'm reading through the financial statements, when we're looking at your assets and liabilities, do you have enough net financial assets, so enough cash to pay your future liabilities? Can you see that in the statements? Do you know what resources you have in place for future commitments? If we know that we're going to have to contribute to get a shovel in the ground project ready next year, do we have those funds? Do we have the reserves? Are we happy with the levels of reserves we have? And then coming back to capital projects, because if we talk about risks, this is probably the biggest risk every municipality is facing in terms of infrastructure and being able to go through and making sure that you're able to keep up with the infrastructure as it ages. And then the last couple items, this is more when you're getting into your budget deliberations, when you're looking at your revenue generation, as talked about earlier today, how does that compare to covering your operating expenses and any debt that you have? Or is your revenue projections when you have your budget coming in as expected? If not, how are we going to adjust? Are you spending according to your budget? There's a reason why we report to the budget on your financial statements as well. And are you looking at what your future commitments are? Again, coming back to that 5-year plan. And then the last items, again, going back to higher risk areas. You know, if you're not meeting budget, where are your grants for capital projects? How's your tendering process? Is there money set aside for unplanned contingency if you have a critical infrastructure event that you need to deal with? So again, I went through that really quickly, just in light. I know that, you know, we had the public hearing, but, you know, I was here tonight just to talk about just some of the items to bring to your attention and just want to know, is there anything that I can do, any questions I can answer while I'm here today?
Well, thank you, Mario. I'll put it out there. Council, questions, comments? Councilor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your presentation, Mario, and making the trip to Cranbrook. Just curious, like in the past, like I've probably been through 7 audits since my time on council. And I would comment that they do seem complex and they do seem overwhelming. And normally I look at the 80 pages and I'm like, okay, Charlotte, is there anything we should be aware about? And it sounds like, just looking at the presentation that you brought forward here, like these issues, are these things that your like BDO be pointing out to us, or is this more guiding us as far as what we should be looking for? I guess that's my question. Are you doing like a little bit of a different take on our audit than what we've seen in the past? Or are you just kind of giving us a heads up of what we should be prepared for?
Okay. Through the mayor to Councillor Peabody, you know, I guess when we look at what we're talking about today is that we want to kind of just set the table and talk a bit about arming you with some things to think about and get those discussions going. You know, whenever we come in and do an audit, and especially, with, myself being, a newer partner onto your file, but specializing in local governments, there's going to be some things that are different. Some of the presentations are going to feel different coming forward. But my hope coming out of today is, and this is what I was speaking with Charlotte about when we decided to put this presentation forward, is that I hope that this starts a dialogue so that you guys can start to think about what can you be asking of management, and management changing how they're doing it. I know I've already talked about some of the things that I'm going to change in terms of how I present, we present the year-end result, to kind of help you understand how things better align with what was presented. So to me, this is the start of an ongoing dialogue, really.
Great, thank you.
Further, Council? I have nothing. Charlotte?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what we do have ready, specific to this upcoming audit, is the schedule for the audit timing. This is a very, very condensed schedule in terms of, in terms of what else is on the schedule. It's probably, I believe it exceeds, our schedule, at least downstairs, exceeds 1 page for sure. So what you're seeing here is the October 21st date, which is Mario's presentation that you have just seen. And then at the end of November, we are anticipating that there will be an email from the auditor to each councillor requesting information regarding any knowledge of any actual or suspected fraud. It's a standard email. You all should have seen it in years past. So it is your opportunity to speak to the auditor if you have any concerns. In addition to that, when Mario comes back in January, we will be attempting to, there will be the presentation for the audit planning report to council, and we're having a discussion about also a strategic discussion with council in camera, where you have an opportunity to speak with the auditor. And at the same time, you will be receiving the planning report that will walk through the type of audit that and the type of work that the auditor is planning to conduct during their year-end field work, which is expected to be March 24th through to April 4th. You will also note that the dates are tentative, as we don't yet have the 2025 regular council meeting dates. And there are also things that can happen in the finance world that may require some minor changes to when the year-end fieldwork is done. The financial statement presentation, or finalization, pardon me, is done by the City of Cranbrook, and we're hoping to have that finished around the end of April. And then the presentation of the audit final report at the City of Cranbrook Council meeting. It says May 5th, but it will be May 12th. I believe that's the tentative date, based on what Marnie will be presenting in December for council meeting dates for 2025. The final deadline for the financial statements to the ministry is May 15th, so they have to be approved and authorized prior to that. I think this is good information for council, so that you can see when you should next and throughout the year expect to see either Mario or myself with respect to the financial statements.
Thank you, Charlotte. And thanks again, Mario. That was very informative. I know there's a couple of things that twigged on me. I'll probably just follow up with Charlotte over the next couple of days on a couple of things that prompted me to look into. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And if there's anything that you'd like through Charlotte for me to follow up, I'm also happy to do that as well.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Second delegation tonight is Staff Sergeant Barry Graham, who's presenting the third quarter report. Welcome, Barry. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Price, members of council, staff, and members of the general public. Thank you for the opportunity to present Cranbrook RCMP's third quarter report for 2024. Just wait for this slide. So in detachment news, in August, the detachment welcomed Sergeant Graham Hartle, the new Ops Support NCO. Sergeant Hartle oversees Indigenous policing, community policing, the mental health liaison position, and general investigations. 3 of Cranbrook RCMP members, Constable Forgeron, Constable Ferrier, and myself, were recognized by the RCMP for more than 25 years of service with the force at the Long Service Awards at Delta St. Eugene. To the next slide, please. So for human resources, we've lost a few members over the last few months to transfer. Constable Matt Coxford, Corporal Dean Kletzel, Constable Forgeron will be retiring at the end of this week, and Corporal Phil Sullivan retired recently as well. Incoming members, Sergeant Hartle and Constable Carly Monroe just returned a couple of weeks ago, and 3 new members should be here over fall. We have been using a lot of external resources based on our current strained resources. So 80 shifts between August and December will be filled by out-of-jurisdiction members working overtime at Cranbrook Detachment. If you see faces you don't recognize, then that will be where they're coming from. They are helping quite a bit. They just are not sticking around to carry the file load, so that gets transferred back to our members. So community engagement. Our community engagement coordinator, Melody, relaunched the Cranbrook RCMP volunteer program. Melody has provided a few training sessions to our 5 existing volunteers through September, including Speedwatch and business engagement, our first of many crime reduction initiatives with the support of volunteers. The community engagement coordinator implemented Project Industrial Road Business, or Project IRB as we call it. Through reports to police and communication with the business community, we identified the industrial area as a hotspot for thefts, mischief, and other crimes, and have started our business engagement efforts there. We will work to expand our business engagement efforts to other areas of the community in an effort to reach as many businesses as we can. Through Project IRB, the community engagement coordinator, along with the volunteers, have met with businesses to determine what issues they were facing around crime and social disorder, and provide some resources on crime prevention through environmental design or CPTED, as well as some other tips to increase the success of police investigations in the event the businesses experience criminal behavior. Our volunteers went out on their first Speedwatch deployment and were able to check 1,301 vehicles. When we receive traffic complaints or information about a problem area, such as speeding in a certain part, we will utilize our volunteers to attend that specific location and set up a speed reader board to notify drivers of their speed and act as a reminder to slow down. Volunteers document how many drivers were speeding and bring that back to the members to determine about further traffic enforcement or other initiatives were required. We look forward to sharing information about the other crime reduction initiatives as we roll them out. And so our members conducted 4 bar walk patrols, 28 proactive patrols to hotspot locations, and 15 curfew checks. With the increase in calls for service and the number of files requiring 2 or more member response, our proactive policing numbers are slightly lower than in other quarters. The metrics. So reports to police over the quarter, 2,358, up from the previous quarter. I can go through each one individually if you like, or anything that piques your attention at the end we can speak to. But we're seeing a lot of increases across the board in reactive policing. We still have a pretty good success rate when it comes to getting our reports from council in, and the approval rate. And the stats, which I won't break down individually, but we have seen, some significant increases when you look at commercial break and enters. And again, these are the ones that are reported to us. Up 20 from 18 to 38, residential from 6 up to 15, so +9. We have seen a decrease in motor vehicle accidents overall, but our injury ones are up from 1 to 5. Overall, nothing shocking when I see it up there, but it is quite busy. And that is my report.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Barry. Couple questions for you, just in regards to your last comments there. With the break and enters and the commercial stuff there, is that a group moving through? Is that an increase because people are actually reporting? Just curious your thoughts on the increase.
That's a great question. I would hope that there's an increase in the reporting to be part of it. But we are seeing, we're seeing a lot more crime ourselves. And we can't attribute it to any one group. We have intelligence that points to people that have homes, people that don't have homes. We can't really ascertain who's responsible for all of it, but it has been quite active, and it's kept us on our toes.
Just a supplemental. So with the amount of overtime that we're accruing from outside members, what is our current roster count compared to where we should be for capacity or for bodies?
That's a great question. So right now we have 24 members in general duty on paper, and 4 of those are the unfunded positions that we really appreciate to offset our resource issues. So we have 3 hard vacancies. That's members that have transferred, retired, and their replacements haven't shown up yet, and 7 soft vacancies. So from that 24, we have 14. For that reason, we haven't been able to fill the mental health liaison position and the community policing position to bring us to 4 members per watch. And just to give you, put that in perspective, like our minimums in 1997 for a Saturday night were 4. So at that, that's nobody taking leave. That's taking the community policing and mental health liaison. That's no one has leave, no one has training, no one else can be off operationally. And this past Saturday night, we had 1 person from the shift left scheduled. So 2 of us, and you know things are bad when I'm working a night shift. That was Saturday night, so it's not good right now. We are optimistic that some of our members will come back, and like over the fall, we will have 3 members arrive. But yeah, that's where we sit with emergency response.
Thank you. I guess supplemental, I wasn't going to ask one, but hearing that dreary story, it does raise alarm. This isn't the first time we've been in this predicament. I feel like we've been kind of in this tight situation for the last 4 years, maybe longer. What's the solution? Because we're always, optimistic, but it seems like nothing delivers. Maybe we need to start looking at a different way of policing. Maybe we need to start looking at different types of bodies that we actually bring in that aren't maybe full RCMP, but we have community safety officers. I think there's outside the box solutions here rather than be hopefully optimistic and we can't have proper responses and you're having to work night shift, and that's not conducive to where we need you in a position of staff sergeant, not working on a Saturday night. I know it's what you do because that's the duty of an officer, and I commend you for that. But I think we need to have hard conversations about where do we go from here, because just being optimistic isn't solving the problems on the streets. We're seeing that with those crime stats, and I think people are concerned.
And I agree. We have to look at every possible option. And just to be clear, that was my first night shift in a while. There's a lot more at our office. Like with the overtime members that come in, quite often our members have to bump to nights. So the sacrifices are a lot heavier before me. I just wanted to be honest for once, and in getting out and being an actual police officer. We did look into the community safety officer, sorry. Amanda's done tremendous work. We've had meetings with 5 different detachments, and there is some value to that, but we'll give more details in a follow-up meeting. But they're all tiered plans where you still need a police officer involved in it. Mayor and Council, what you guys have supported us with those 4 unfunded positions has been core to keeping our operations from collapsing, and that's one of the out of the box things that I would like to explore again. That to add more of those positions on to be able to absorb the roller coaster. And we showed last year, we actually at the start of the fiscal year, we were overstaffed. we were in that situation that I'd spoken to Charlotte and Mark about many times, that in that unlikely situation that we had more, and we had more people even than on paper outside of the unfunded positions, and we did immediately. We assigned people to Golden that had a need, that Creston that had a need, to do exactly what we said. We'd run a vacancy management strategy, and we were still able to give back, I think, $250,000 last year in budget. So to build on that without any extra tax increase, just basically stay within our budget, that would be my suggestion, but we can speak about that in detail at a future meeting.
Thanks, Barry. Councilor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to quickly highlight, maybe you can speak to it a little bit. So reports to Crown Council, July to September, 153. And of those 153 reports, 148 had charges approved. Am I reading that correctly?
That'd be correct.
So that's a 97% success rate. So, I just wanted to highlight that because we know and understand that there's frustration in the community at times with bigger justice system issues than we can certainly address here at our City of Cranbrook table. But just briefly, can you speak a little bit, do the 4 watch clerk positions contribute at all to that 97% success rate in this last quarter?
Thank you for highlighting that. And yes, they do. That's one thing. As much as the team is stretched, the quality is high. The watch clerks do a lot of work with everything from the bail package, which is instrumental in keeping people in custody. They put into English what some of us struggle with. They add so many of the text pages, take so many of the administrative load off, do it faster, better. Definitely to that number. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the major, drains in our resources is the amount of time that our police officers are spending in the hospital. And you have 44 hours this quarter, 22 last quarter, 66 hours in Q3. What is this solution there? How can we get police officers away from having to spend all that time in the hospital and have some other sort of security service in the hospital look after the patients?
It's a great question. If you remember, now Staff Sergeant Chris Dodds, who used to work here in the op support role, he's been championing a new Health IM. It's an app-based program to actually get more of the information we need specific to the mental health calls for service. We're working with the clinician, Chelsea Weisbecker, who's on leave right now. A lot of those things have helped. Health IM will help. Chelsea has helped substantially in cutting down the times at the hospital, and we've been working with Interior Health to get where we need to get with the placement, and hopefully some of the underlying issues are dealt with when it comes to mental health. We had a prisoner for about a day and a half over the weekend as well that had medical needs, and we were left at the hospital alone. That was probably 36 hours. Wow. That Saturday night, that was when I spent the first 4 hours of my shift. So we only had 2 people available at the time to respond to calls from Jaffrey to Irishman's Creek, up to Wycliffe, down to the U.S. border. So working with the other stakeholders, hopefully deal with the underlying issues that we're not being tied into it, and it's not Cadillac service, but just to get that little more sense of urgency that when we're at the hospital, there's no one or less people that are able to respond to the 911 calls, and we just want to be able to get out and do our job.
Okay, thank you, Barry. And just a really quick comment. One of the things that is up significantly is the amount of thefts from vehicles, from 24 up to 68. I know we did a campaign in the past, an information campaign about locking your doors at night. I wonder if we should, send that out again. That'd be possible.
And yes, thank you for that. And Sergeant Hartle brought that very thing up this past week. And we are going to try a more enhanced media strategy, from everything to providing the photos of outstanding property crimes to the general public regularly, whether it's a weekly thing, and reinforcing to people that a lot of the theft from vehicles are not, I don't know of one that is sophisticated. There are crimes of opportunity and just simply locking your door. Protect your valuables, don't leave them in the open. We don't even have a lot of like break into vehicles. It's literally unlock, just checking a handle, and that's a great strategy, just to remind people, like 9 o'clock, lock everything up. Thanks.
Thank you further. Well, thank you very much. Very good report. Please pass on to your members that council is certainly sensitive to the challenges, that your members and all members of emergency services are facing today. We've never been at this point in society. I mean, we see it in Cranbrook, but every city across Canada is tasked with the same challenge, and it's taken a toll on our emergency services workers. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
Next on the agenda, we have as bylaws. We have 4 bylaws to consider tonight. The first bylaw is the official community plan amendment bylaw number 4165/2024, which was the subject of the public hearing tonight. We have 2 options moving forward to this bylaw. Somebody care to move one of the options, Councilor Graham?
Yeah, I'd like to move the alternative option 1, that council consider public input on the public hearing on October 21st, 2024, and council give 3rd reading of the official community plan. So I'd like to move alternative option 1 and 2.
Okay. Secretary, Councilor Popov? Discussion. Councilor Graham?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. After consideration of reading letters and hearing multiple different viewpoints on this OCP and zoning change, this is really an out-of-the-box Band-Aid for an unconventional time. Is it perfect? No, but it plugs a hole and provides some relief for those that are up to here with not knowing what to do. Some of those pressures would be relieved if one of the 4 of the current developers who we've approved to upzone would actually build their buildings, but we don't have that. We've been active in trying to get zoning changes done, but with no result. And so we need these needs met, and this provides some immediate relief for some of our low income, and some of for working families, and for people that are working out of town that need a place for a couple months. So I think that, is this perfect? No, but it definitely meets a need that we can deal with now, and keep our fingers crossed that somebody will actually build one of the complexes that we've approved multiple years ago.
Thank you very much. Councilor Popov.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So, and further to Councilor Graham, if we recall, we approved the campground regulation to be developed. So that's been approved by council for that to come forward. So I believe that means that should we then approve this tonight, it means the owner will have to comply with the campground regulation, because we put that in first before we approve this. I'm getting a maybe from a face over there. So I think that was a positive thing, professional thing that we did as council last week. Secondly, there was some debate at the hearing today as well about the taxes. The reality is going to be that if we don't do anything, this land's going to sit dormant, and there's going to be no tax generation. If this does go forward with 100+ units, there is going to be some property tax. And while I'm hopeful that in my lifetime, the remainder of this land up there may get housing, I don't see it in the short to medium term. So at least there's some moving forward with some need, and also some property tax, though not what it would be if there was real housing going up there. The last thing is, or I guess the other part is, that was raised again today, there needs to be more RV parks out in the rural district. Well, yes, I would welcome there be more RV parks out in the rural regional district, but that's not happening as well. So that reality isn't in play right now. The last thing was, a number of months ago, we completed another housing needs study, and clearly in the housing needs study, it identified a sort of niche as part of the overall priorities where we need this type of short-term, low-income, transient type of housing. So it's not necessarily going to be all RV parking. It's going to be some of the short-term, transient type of housing that's identified in our housing needs study. So for all those reasons and more, I'll be in support of this.
Thank you, Councilor Popov. Councilor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe just a couple comments and then a couple questions. So just in terms of the proposal that's come forward, I think might be an important distinction just to clarify between affordable versus low income, and maybe there's some crossover there. But, just doing a quick Google, looking at fifth wheels, used low end, like the lowest end kind of came up with $37,000 for a fifth wheel, right up to $118,000. So for sure that's more affordable than house. We know that starter homes, those prices are certainly higher than that, but just so everyone's aware kind of what the cost of those units can be. And then for park models, looking at $146,000 up to $152,000. So again, certainly more affordable than the starter homes we see in our community, but might be more than people maybe thought. So, just so everyone kind of has that as part of their awareness. I had a couple questions. So for Rob, I wonder when we look at the new draft OCP, what is the zoning for this area in that new OCP?
So, through the mayor to Councilor Ray, if I recall correctly, it remains the low density residential.
Okay, just wanted to get a sense of, what kind of we were looking at in terms of our OCP planning. Another question that I think has been raised somewhere along the line in some of the correspondence, it sounded like there was an issue about a second exit. So do we need a second exit? Is there a second exit?
So again, through Mayor to Councilor Ray, there is a proposal for a secondary exit through the Panhandle portion. I believe that was shown on the plan, and that would be utilized, and one of the requirements as part of the development, they will be required to do a wildfire development permit, which would look at the exit requirements as well. And we would speak with fire services, and it's also part of the campground bylaw development, but I believe there was the exit on the Panhandle. It's not sufficient to build a public road, which is the commentary about the landlocked. It's not wide enough for that, so it does make it difficult to create a public road through there. But that would be something that we'll be looking at as part of the development should this go forward.
Okay, thank you. At the Advisory Planning Commission, one of the members of the committee just raised a question because these models are not at BC Building Code standard. Would the city have any liability regarding people living in them 365 days a year? So Mark, I wonder if you could just speak to, the concern was the city going to accidentally find ourselves in a position of being liable?
Mayor Price through to Councilor Ray. So that kind of question comes up often in rezoning. And legally speaking, zoning doesn't attract legal liability. The use within the zone does. So it's not, there's really nothing in a zoning decision that attracts liability.
Thank you. And then just one final comment. And as one of my colleagues alluded to earlier, I really appreciate that council has already passed a motion that if this is to move forward to final approval, that there will be a camping bylaw that comes forward prior to that final approval. So I appreciate that, and just wanted to highlight that the Advisory Planning Commission also reinforced that. They were very deliberate in their recommendation to council that they concur that their recommendation is that, yes, council proceed with a regulatory campground bylaw prior to the adoption of these OCP and zoning amendments.
Thank you. Councilor Brissett.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the things that I'm very concerned about with this is the long-term repercussions. As someone who's been sitting at this table for a while, the long-term repercussions of decisions made by other councils haunt us at different times, and I'm concerned about doing that. So with this, if this is to go ahead and be zoned for recreational use in the future, the developer could decide to put, ask for a zoning change and put residential homes on this. Am I correct?
Absolutely, through the mayor to Councillor Blissett. Absolutely, it would be a request of an owner to change it back. You know, and it would be this exact same process. And should a future council decide to want to initiate a zoning onto themselves, there is that possibility as well.
Okay.
That's kind of a worst case. It's not often that councils do that, but it would just be a bylaw amendment process. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's reassuring. Because we certainly do have an immediate need, as was pointed out by a number of the people that spoke tonight, both for people passing through the community, whether they're working here short-term or not, and certainly more than just 2 weeks, which is being provided by the campground in town. So, yeah, so I can, you know, I understand the concerns of some of the neighbors, but I do think it's important for people to have housing. And this is a short-term measure to help people through that. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Piwani?
Thank you, Mayor. Just jotting down a couple notes here. For me, looking at this rezoning, you know, I look at it as a business and not a solution for housing. There is a demand for this type of housing, and I feel like Gary is providing the supply. So I guess the question is, do we want this business inside Cranbrook, or do we want it to move outside of Cranbrook? If right now we have a vacant piece of land and there is a means to generate some development there and generate some tax revenue and generate some, you know, if not, it's not the perfect solution for housing, but it is at least a little bit of housing for residents. I do disagree with how this development will be taxed. This RV park is being sold to council as a source of housing and as a place for temporary residences. And I feel like it should be taxed as a residence. In my opinion, the individuals living here use the same amount of city services as other residents in Cranbrook. And I feel like they should be paying their fair share. So I hope we see that come down in our future bylaws if possible. I was torn up till this very day, just as far as like which way I should vote on here. There's arguments from both sides. This is the second rezoning that we've done in this neighborhood that drastically changes the flavor of this neighborhood. But at the same time, I have a hard time saying no to the development because there is a need for the housing. It's vacant land right now that isn't providing any tax base, well, very little tax base. As Norma, Councilor Blissett brought up, this eventually could be changed back to R1 and developed into housing. So I will be voting in favor of it, but it was definitely a hard decision.
Thank you very much. Certainly from my perspective, gentleman earlier spoke and referred to the term that was used quite often in our housing task force when they were meeting, outside the box, because of the issues we have here. This is outside the box, and it clearly is. And you know what? Sometimes outside the box isn't the most ideal solution, but sometimes you got to take the best solution that's available to you. This solution is now available to us. Secondly, you know, outside the box in a few communities in the province in the last couple of years, or last year certainly, is tiny homes. I've seen tiny homes and I've been in a lot of park models, and I'd sure rather be in a park model than in a tiny home. Make no mistake, especially for people with families and such, you know, with children. So to me, there's just no question there. And again, you know, as Councillor Blissett questioned there, future change, future zoning change from a recreational back to residential. That's easy. If you got a trailer park in there, that's not easy. We all know now, you try and shut a trailer park down after, you know, X number of years. You're not doing it anymore, right? So this is, I think is a really good solution because it's subject to change down the road. If, let's be honest, any developer that has park models on property that's desirable for single family dwellings, and if the market's that hot out here, they're gonna flip that back to R1 real fast, aren't they? You know, so to me, I think this is a good solution. And, you know, I have thought about the impact on some of the neighbors that aren't happy with it, but, you know, I've looked into the history of the current park. Pretty solid history. Our emergency services aren't going there. The police, ambulance, fire departments have not had to respond there. It's a community, and there's a community that's looking after each other. I think that the ownership and the management is taking care of issues as they happen there. From my understanding, you know, after 2 issues, there's no issues anymore. You know, so they are on top of things. So that is one of the determining factors for me again. So yeah, I'll be voting in favor of this. So further questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, the next bylaw for consideration is the City of Cranbrook Zone Amendment Bylaw number 4166.
Mayor Price, I just wondered for the benefit of the people in the room, if Rob could just say what the next steps are.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up after the next one, but yeah, I think maybe before we move into the next bylaw is just, I'd really like to ask our planning, you know, what are the next steps and estimated timelines on this so that everybody's clear in what's going on here. You know, what the expectations are moving forward. So Rob, could you kind of highlight where we're moving next and
Sure.
how things
So,
will?
through the mayor to council and mayor. So upon third reading, the zoning bylaw itself will be forwarded to the Ministry of Transportation as it requires their approval, as the properties within 800 meters of the highway. They have been referred. I did send a referral early, so they kind of have a heads up. And so we will wait to see what their requirements may be. I suspect based on other previous development applications in this area and proximity to the highway, there may be requirements for traffic impact assessments to be done by the Ministry of Transportation prior to them approving the zoning bylaw. And so that will be the next step. As far as timing, that's a difficult one to say. Lately, things have moved a little bit slower than they have in the past. However, having said that, things are more complicated now when it comes to highway intersections and such. So I would envision, you know, best case scenario, minor traffic impact assessment, couple months. We just saw that Shadow Mountain took almost a year to navigate. Different scale, right? Much different scale.
Yeah.
And then so during that time, of course, should the zoning bylaw also be given third reading, we do have the direction to start working on that campground bylaw. We haven't done it yet because of course we didn't know what was going to happen tonight. So didn't want to spend staff resources working on something that may or may not proceed, which is fair. And I think so that would be part of our next step, would start to look at those, you know, research examples, best practices, work with the opponent to see what those standards would be for services, get an understanding of what, you know, is being proposed or what has been developed so far to make sure that, you know, we are addressing, you know, minimum servicing standards, those types of things. As, you know, access and, you know, fire, and you mentioned hydrants and stuff. So those are the things that we would be looking at as putting into the regulatory bylaw, anything else that comes. So I would envision it'll be a few months before it comes back to council for adoption, just given how I've seen previous applications. But that would basically be the next steps. It would be forwarded to Ministry of Transportation to acknowledge and advise them that council gave a bylaw third reading. Now they have to sign it, and then we wait to hear what their comments are. They usually go through us to get to to speak to the applicant. So we often work with the ministry and an applicant together. We do more often than not, we provide input on the terms of reference for the traffic impact assessment. So the terms of reference would address both Ministry of Transportation requirements and anything the city might have. And then once those terms of reference are agreed upon, then the applicants go and conduct the study and work. And then ultimately hopefully receive Ministry of Transportation approval. And then at that point, we can bring the bylaw back for adoption. And like I said, during that time, hopefully we'll have this draft campground bylaw prepared to bring to the subsequent meeting together at the same meeting. So that would be that's the gist of the process.
Thanks very much, Rob. Good. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on where we're going with this. The next bylaw for consideration, the City of Cranbrook Zone Amendment Bylaw number 4166, 2024. Can I get a motion that subject to council's consideration of public input received up to and including the public hearing of October 21st, 2024, council give third reading to the City of Cranbrook Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4166, 2024. Mover, please. Councillor Graham. Councillor Peabody. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks. The next bylaw for consideration tonight is the annual taxation exemption bylaw number 4171, 2024, which is on the agenda for adoption. Can I get a motion? The council adopt the annual taxation exemption bylaw number 4171, 2024. Mover, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Blanchette. Discussion, Councillor Ray.
Just as a follow-up to our previous discussions on this item, I think one of the items we identified was that there's potential for some policy work on this issue, that our current policy from past years was intentionally kept general. But I think because we're a policy-focused governance council, I just wanted to flag that for a little bit of homework down the line for us to consider. That I think it's more effective probably to work on a policy, and where we want to refine things, do that in the policy, and then the policy just rolls out when we have to do this on a yearly basis. So just think that'd be a more effective process that would be true to our focus on governance. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Final bylaw on the agenda tonight is the Airport Parking and Business Control Amendment, bylaw number 4172, 2024. Can I get a motion that council adopt Airport Parking and Business Control Amendment bylaw number 4172, 2024, please? Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Well, moving into new business, first item of new business tonight is from the Engineering and Development Services Department regarding the Rural Economic Diversification Infrastructure Program. I'll ask Darren to review the report for council. Darren Brewer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Price. I will be as quick as I can. Pretty straightforward. We plan on applying to a Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program intake this fall. Nuts and bolts of it is up to $100,000 funded 80% by the province, meaning that that we are proposing putting up $20,000 of taxpayers' money from our existing economic development GL from this year. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a wayfinding and signage plan, and I open up the floor for any comments or questions from council.
Thank you, Darren. Can I get a motion that council authorize staff to apply to Reddit for up to $100,000 for a wayfinding and signage plan? Mover, please. Councillor Graham, Councillor Ray. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Can I get a motion that council approve up to $20,000 in funding from the Investment Development Fund? Mover, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Graham. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Final report tonight is from Finance Department regarding an air carrier operating agreement with WestJet Encore Limited. I'll ask Charlotte to give a review of the report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Price. Mayor Price, or council through Mayor Price through the rest of council. So the report is seeking council's approval to enter into a air carrier operating agreement with WestJet Encore for a 5-year term commencing on October 27th through to October 26th, 2029, with 2 5-year options to renew. If council has any questions specific to the report, Tristan is here and happy to answer those questions.
Okay. Can I get a motion that council approve entering into an air carrier operating agreement with WestJet Encore Limited for 5-year term commencing October 27th, 2024, expiring October 26th, 2029, with 2 5-year options to renew? And further, that the CAO be authorized to sign the required documents on behalf of the city. Mover, please. Councillor Bissette, Councillor Peabody, discussion. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and appreciate the way I'm going to weave my question into this report, so I'm not called out of order. Tristan, I noticed that this is based on a fee of $9 per passenger. With a drastic reduction of flights coming in and out of Cranbrook, how does this affect our revenue stream? Because we aren't seeing the amount of flights through WestJet. How do we go about increasing that revenue? Is there any opportunity for that through WestJet or other carriers?
Mayor Price, through you to Councillor Graham. I would, I guess, 2-part answer. I'll start with the second half. The air operating agreement there's language within that agreement that does not restrict us from revisiting those fees outside of the renewal term process of the agreement. So that's one side of it. The other is, while the flight schedule reduction is there, the actual seat capacity that the airport is selling on is actually up 23% with these changes. So while the frequency is down, the actual capacity per day of passengers is 23% more with the flight schedule changes that have happened. That is very different, though, from what we need to accommodate the seamless travel that we all expect from our air carrier partners. And without speaking out of turn, because the visibility of what the carriers are doing long-term is becoming harder and harder for me to read. So I've been in this career now for 23 years, and this is the hardest time I've ever had in projecting what the air carriers are going to be moving to for their schedules. And they're not sharing that as quickly as they have in the past. That being said, I can say pretty confidently that we're going to see an improvement in our schedule come, I guess, as early in the new year as late January. So the pain that we're feeling right now with this very condensed schedule is somewhat temporary. But I guess all I would really like to point out right now is, while the schedule is reduced, our actual financial component of the per passenger fee capacity actually gives us potential for 23% more revenue than we have seen leading up to this point.
And just supplemental, because we went down that road. Is there any other airline options? Like I look at like Porter or something, you know, they're really hammering hard. Like, is there a way that we could land something that is of substance?
Mayor Price, to you, to Councillor Graham, I love this conversation. I don't want to burden too much time, and I would love to speak more on this. I actually have a call with someone tomorrow at 3 p.m. that is a different carrier. I never stop being the squeaky wheel and beating on doors, and we do have opportunities. That being said, historically speaking, our long-term fix is to build the strongest relationships with the national carriers that we can. And we have seen, you know, other airlines come in and fill those needs for us on a temporary basis, like Integra Air, like Central Mountain Air, like others. And it's very similar to the debate that I've heard going around the room today around what is before you today is often the perfect remedy for today, but not the perfect remedy long term. And it's sort of like that. I'm always going to look at what opportunities are, but trying not to harm the 25, 50-year plan that is the best thing for our air industry here in the Kootenay. So in short, yes, there are some opportunities, and I'm working them hard. Long term, though, I don't want to make moves that sacrifice the big wins, that we are going to outgrow this painful phase we're in right now.
Thank you. Further? Thank you very much for that. You know, we all know we're in great hands. And that, yeah, you're as good as they're out there taking care of business in Cranbrook's interest, so thank you very much. Can I get a motion? Oh, I got, hang on. Yeah, discussion. Oh, all in favor? Yep. Opposed? That's carried. Lost my spot. Okay, we have a couple of admin updates tonight. First up is from Jason Perot regarding the water supply summary 2024. Jason.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to provide an update of the water restrictions and stuff that we've seen over this last summer. So I'll start from the beginning. So in January, staff recognized that the snowpack levels were quite a bit lower than previous years. And so in February, we, at the February 5th regular meeting of council, we advised council of what we were noticing and what we were going to be expecting this summer. Staff also reported that the creeks were running at about a 20% low from previous years. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was notified of that. So prior to our spring operations, Pilot Works was able to secure a secondary source just outside of town for our spring cleanup operations. So typically the Pilot Works uses about 15 truckloads of city water. With this secondary source, we only managed to use 3 from the city water source. So that was a huge savings there. Also, Pilot Works crew did not perform the unidirectional flushing program for this year. So that, of course, is a significant water savings that we've seen. For the parks, irrigation, we reduced the irrigation to in the green spaces and adjusted the operating hours of the splash pads. Additionally, we avoided activating systems with known leaks and prioritized preventative maintenance and regular checks on those. On the play fields themselves, we concentrated watering efforts mostly on the play areas and not on the fringe. So say at Moyer Park, it was just the play fields that got majority of the water. Communications this summer, the city utilized the social and of course the conventional media sources. We also used digital media through local restaurants. So you would see just highlights of what restriction we were on through certain local restaurants through town. We also had signs placed at strategic areas in town that you may have seen on quite a bit, power poles and stuff like that, just outlining what water restriction we were on. Overall, the Phillips Reservoir stayed full or near full for majority of the summer. We did have a total savings of 32,462,700 imperial gallons this year. So, and in the report, you could see the trends in there from 2023 to 2024. You could see a significant consumption change in 2024. Bylaw officers opened 126 files this summer on water offenders, and out of that, 6 tickets were issued for repeat offenders. So overall, the citizens of Cranbrook made it possible for us to have enough water for quantity and quality, and we want to congratulate them on a job well done. So,
thanks, Jason. Great job for sure. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Jason, the flushing program. How long can we delay the flushing program year to year? Is there at some point we absolutely have to do a flushing program? Do we have to do it in the early time of the year when irrigation is already going on?
Typically what we've done, Mayor Price through Councillor Popoff, yeah, every spring we usually start that program. I really want to do it next year. Yeah, I don't want to go more than 2 years.
But in the spring as well?
In the spring, usually what we'll do is in the spring or in the fall when the flows are lower.
Councillor Graham. Councillor Brissett.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. I like the report and it's good to read. But like say when we're doing the flushing or when you're looking at needing to do dust control or things like that, can we not turn the wells on? Can we not fire up another well Can we not pull water from a well to fill up one of the trucks for dust control? Like, I feel like we have some capacity there, and it might be a way that can alleviate some of that pressure, so we can do the flushings, and as well, it turns these motors on, so we're not replacing the pumps in 7 years because they haven't ran.
Mayor Price through Councillor Graham. Unfortunately, the way that our wells are set up right now, we can't directly connect right to them. They feed into the distribution system. So we are looking at options for our 2 shallow wells that we do have in town to possibly converting those to other water stations that would be utilized for that. Exactly what you're saying.
Councillor Bassett.
Well, thank you. So we saved about 5% on the water. And last year we had a report, or maybe it was the year before, I don't remember, it all goes into one, that we could look at up to possibly 40% water savings by going to water meters. And we were to hear back from staff on this, and I'm just wondering, I'm not sure if you're the person to answer this or if CAO Furcho is. Where are we on a proposal to council on water meters?
I could probably speak a little bit to it.
Whoever wants to answer, it's fine by me.
Mayor Price to Councillor Blissett. I can't really speak too much on behalf of engineering, but I know that we are working with a consultant on the process of a universal metering program.
Yes.
But other than that, I don't have much information for you. I'm sorry.
So Mayor Price through to Councillor Bassett, what we can do is just come back with an admin update. It's a.
Sure.
The timeline.
Because we do have 2 years left of this administration or council, and it would be nice to deal with that before we go.
Administration is aware that this is a priority for council. It's just we have a pretty good workload going, but it is, as Jason said, it is being worked on. So I'll ask for an update with the timelines.
Yeah. Yeah, if we could get an update on the meters as well, the possibility of sprinkler systems, irrigation system, and all new construction. Further? Okay. Thank you, Jason. Great work. And again, great work. You know what, the communication between our department and our communications people was fantastic this year on that. So they did a really good job. They should got the message and the points out there. Next up is from Fire and Emergency Services Department, emergency call volume third quarter 2024 report. Scott Driver on the line there?
Yeah.
Hey, Scotty.
Good evening, Mayor Price and Council. Happy to bring to you the report about call volumes for the fire department over the months of July, August, and September. So as you can read in the report, we had 678 calls for service, which is a 20% increase over the same period in 2023. Of note, we had significant structure fires at the Amy Woodland School, which continues to impact students and families in the community. That was a very challenging fire just based on the size of the building and some of the complexities of a school. Additionally, we had a significant structural fire event where we lost 3 homes for 3 families in 2 buildings. And I do want to just again thank our partners in that one. We were impacted significantly by the winds that day during the summer, and as we are a forested community, there was a lot of risk to that fire becoming a forest fire that would have impacted the entire community. So I'm very thankful for the help that we got from our partners in the RCMP and Welfare Service, and just wanted to bring that one back to the attention of the community that summer creates some pretty significant challenges for this fire department, and we're thankful to have the help when we call for it. Over the course of the 3 months, we had 163 fire rescue calls. 70 of them were outdoor fires, so we're still experiencing fires happening in yards and rural properties, residential areas during the campfire ban and the fire season. 52 fire alarms in our larger multifamily structures, and then 37 fire or rescue calls in that period. Additionally, we had 524 medical calls, which is quite high. That's 74% of our call volume. And 81 of those were breathing related calls, 72 were overdose, and 57 were due to seizures. So there's still a lot of work going on in the medical side of things. And especially coming out of summer, I do want to just thank my team for the really hard work that they do. Because of the wildfire risks that we experience, we've done a lot of really good preventative work. And I spoke recently to council about the 3 prescribed burns that we held in the last quarter, especially just in this last month, doing the good work to try and prevent those forest fires. But there's a direct correlation between the risks that we're actually as a community under during the fire season and the work that we're trying to do to mitigate that risk. So I do want to reach out to my staff and just thank them for that and talk about it through council.
Thank you very much, Scott. Council, any questions, comments? Scott, I see we got 72 overdoses again this quarter. I believe we had 72 last quarter. So, you know, it's troublesome because we know that those types of calls have a different kind of impact on responders. And the numbers aren't going down, that's for sure. And I think what the public has to realize here too is that's not just people we would think that are out on the street or homeless or whatnot. Probably 50% or more, I don't know the numbers, I haven't been around it for years, but are young males, working males, they work up the valley or they work up north, and this is recreational drugs on the weekend. And so, I mean, I think when a lot of people see those stats, they make assumption of who they are. And certainly from my perspective, my past dealings with emergency responders, these ones take on a lot more personal impact. So they are much harder on the responders because you go to the same ones often and you develop a relationship, and in all fairness, some of them, you're just going until you go to one and you can't help anybody now. And I don't think people realize the trauma that's involved with the family members and the people around these people when they're going through that you're dealing with that additional trauma as well. So anyway, Scott, just let you guys know that, as we said earlier, to Staff Sergeant Graham, we understand and support everything you guys are doing for sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Final report tonight is from Trevor from Recreation and Culture Department regarding upcoming projects at Western Financial Place and user group storage at city facilities. Trevor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I bring to you some current projects that are underway at Western Financial Place. The first one being our aquatic structural columns. So we have 6 out of the 23 columns that were deemed to be more of an urgent repair. And so we have 6 columns right now being excavated and some structural welding being done to them. That started today. It was nice and noisy at the arena, and slated to last for about 3 weeks to be back up and normal. So the affecting the public is during business hours, so about 8:30 till 3 o'clock each day. So it's a minimal impact. Those are our slower times, but it still is an impact on the community. The second project we have going is the aquatic steam generator. This was pushed to a higher priority as it is one of our more used items at the aquatic center. Our current one has been in there for 8 years. They have about an 8 to 10 year life cycle, depending on usage and whatnot. And ours is used quite well. I think it's a minimal cost, but it still is a cost of $13,000 to be replaced. It's a one-off type unit. It's built specifically for our facility. So you can't just go down to the plumbing supply store and pick it up. But that should be up and operational very soon here. The emergency boiler replacement project. So it's well underway. The old boiler is being removed right now, dismantled and removed. And the contractors have received the 4 new smaller boilers. They have them at their warehouse right now. They're doing the manifold and putting them together so that when they bring them over to West Financial Place, they'll be hopefully a plug and play. We have an engineer working on side with them to make sure that any and all calculations are made correctly and it doesn't affect the overall heating, hot water, et cetera, of the facility. And the last one, which is maybe our most exciting one, is the handrails. So we actually have handrails built. They will be going in as early as next week. And the plan is, so we've awarded the design, build, and installation to a local contractor. And they are going to build them and install them as they're made. So you'll see it'll be a progress for the next couple of months of getting these built, installed, and whatnot. So we'll look for some good feedback from our patrons.
Thank you, Trevor. Council, comments, questions? Councilor Ray.
I had just a couple thoughts about the storage project. So thank you very much to your team for working on that. Did you want to speak to that first, or did you already touch on the storage project? Am I jumping ahead?
I haven't talked about it yet, but
I'm jumping ahead. You go ahead.
Okay, so the final update was on user group storage. So taking a deeper look into this and talking to other communities and finding out that this problem or this issue is relevant everywhere. And different communities have come up with different solutions, but it seems like every community is almost having to backtrack on a lot of past precedent. We've done this forever, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, this update is more to bring awareness that we have storage. We've had storage for years for some of these user groups. We have new user groups that now are asking for storage, and we really don't have an answer for them. And it used to be, no, we don't have any. And now the comment coming back is, well, why do they get it and we don't? So I think it's just something that needs to be addressed, whether it's an informal way or if it comes down to a policy. And it really needs to be a direction that we're, you know, City of Cranbrook is going to go in.
Thanks, Trevor. Councilor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. So just really quickly, again, appreciate your team working on this. As you say, we're not alone at all in this. And yeah, I think, you know, now we probably have more awareness around considerations in terms of equity and consistency and stuff. So it's a really good project to be working on. So just a few quick thoughts. Regarding the Moyer Park Field House, so volunteer project from Cranbrook Sunrise Rotary, just as part of our decision-making process, I would be curious to see, I'm assuming there's a written agreement, handing that building over to the city and just what that looked like and if there was any direction in that agreement about the intended use. I mean, I know the building's been donated to the city, but just sometimes it's helpful to review those kind of historical things. So I'd be curious to see, or to have your team, you know, find and look at that agreement and just kind of see what those original thoughts were. Another thought is, and your team might already be working on this, you know, there is a potential for this to become competitive and adversarial because there's lots of different user groups and everybody, you know, loves their activity. But if there's an opportunity to maybe bring the various user groups together and explore the opportunity to maybe find a cooperative solution to engage the user groups in them identifying some solutions. So maybe that could be part of the process to try and take away the adversarial and competitive just aspect that can sometimes happen with these kinds of things. I know there was a concern about city liability if we're storing stuff for other groups and it's in you know, a city location like the Moyer Park Fieldhouse or in the arenas. So I'm wondering if that could be mitigated with a written agreement with those user groups saying we release the city from liability regarding theft and those kinds of things. So that's just a thought from a non-lawyer. I don't know if that's a possibility. And then lastly, just wanting to keep in mind the significant in-kind value from these nonprofit groups that they provide to our city and our community. So for example, in years past, my recollection is that maybe the city used to do more soccer stuff and then KISA has absorbed a bunch of that. So that means that's work the city's not having to do. And so KISA, just as one example, has taken that on and, you know, volunteer board of directors, they have maybe one contract staff. So really can probably do it more effectively and at a lower cost. So just wanting to keep that in mind when we're considering monetary values around storage space, that there's also significant community value in their contributions. So just wanting to make sure we keep that in mind. Same with skating. The city used to do all the skating lessons, and at some point that was transferred over to the skating club. So, you know, just wanting to be sure we really value our relationships with our nonprofit partners and recognize the value they bring to the community.
Thank you. Councilor Graham?
Yeah, thank you. One thing I was wondering about is looking at a way to mitigate some of the issues is what would be the downside? I don't necessarily need an answer tonight because I know we're just starting to research this, but just an idea is what would be the downside to having those like a 40-foot CCAM, but it's split into 4 10-foot lockers. That's brand new, sits there. Like you see them on Industrial Road there, that water guy has it. They're independent 4 lockers. City owns it and we rent it. Like we do, it's like a mini storage. So we got one at Moyer, we got one at Confed, we got one at the rinks. You know, so it's like a 10 by 10 storage or a 20 by 10 storage, like depending on what's needed. And it's like, this is what we can provide. And this is, we rent it and the money goes to pay back for the storage container. But also then if there's one up at Moyer, the money for that goes into whatever money's made goes into Moyer. Like, I'm wondering if that's an option that creates a level playing field. It's like the city puts 2 of those up there. Now you've got 8 lockers. If you need more, we buy one more and rent it. Like that might be an option that would alleviate some of these pressures. Or at Memorial, tuck 2 behind there. You know, they're locked and now there's space. You just got to go grab your stuff. So I don't know if that's been batted around as an idea. I just thought I would throw that out there.
Thank you. Councilor Bissett?
Yes, and further to what Councillor Ray was mentioning, I mean, certainly the liability could be dealt with release agreements. I signed them for skiing and curling and other activities, so I'm sure these user groups could do that, and I'm sure you're aware of that. It's just on this report. But also, I really think we need to make an effort, like I think you already are, but just so you know, as a direction from council, I agree, we need to really appreciate all the recreation that these groups are providing to the Cranbrook community, our city community, as well as the larger area at minimal cost. You know, as we'll see at budget time, recreation is a huge cost item, as you're aware. And that these groups are providing a number of services to our community at very minimal cost to the taxpayer needs to be recognized. And so I do think it's important for us as a city to help them with their storage needs and to, you know, continue. We have been doing this, and like you say, there's a few more. There's not that many more, but there's a few more that are placing demands and look at some way of accommodating this.
Thank you. Further? Okay, thanks very much, Trevor. Now moving on to correspondence. There's one item of correspondence on the agenda tonight from the Spirit of the Rockies Society, thanking the city for sponsorship of this year's festival. Pilot for information. We're good with that. Thank you. That brings us now to Mayor and Councilors' reports and inquiries. Councilor Peabody, we'll be going into close when we're finished here.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to congratulate all the candidates that put their name forward for the recent provincial election, especially in our riding. I'm sure that everyone at our table here knows firsthand how nerve-wracking it is to campaign and put your name forward in an election. I know for me personally, one day you think everyone likes you and you're going to do fine. The next day you feel like everyone hates you and no one's going to vote for you. And then you get elected and you realize that no one likes you. Yeah, so yeah, thank you to them. I lost where I was here. Sorry, 1 second here. Another thing here, and I assume it is in the works, but I'm sure we will be extending an invite to our new MLA to be a special delegate. Maybe give him some time to get his feet wet first, but hopefully that happens sometime in the near future. And then lastly, one question for Trevor, actually. I know we're looking at fixing up the squash court. I was looking at the dimensions, and the court itself is a little bit smaller than a pickleball court. But would there be any interest in building like a smaller version of a pickleball court, or make it adaptable for a pickleball court in that area or in that space? Might be worth, I don't know if the pickleball community would even be interested in having a smaller indoor court. That might be better than nothing and get more usage in there.
Thank you. Councilor Bissett.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. And yes, further to the provincial election, I mean, 3 of us on this council were heavily involved in 3 different campaigns. And but we can still eat dinner together, so that's good. And hopefully it bodes well for our incoming government. But also along that line is we do need, I believe, and see if the rest of the council agrees, that we need to update our election sign bylaw to include Victoria. And we need to do it sooner than later, because, you never know when there might be another election. And well, yes, and also that it's done way in advance so that we don't have a problem. So I just wanted to make a request on that.
Councilor Peabody.
Yeah, just touching on that, if we may, I think we should just do it blanket the whole city with that bylaw. Because if we do Victoria, then they're going to put 50 signs on 7th, and then we're going to have to do 7th.
But there's some rules around that. If staff could look at updating the bylaw, that would be good.
In general, we'll.
Yes, because I mean, the citizens were concerned about this.
Chill for sure.
So what I can do is bring back some discussion points, because what the 2 councilors were just talking about was, we run into capacity issues, like that's why we could do the limit within the strip, because it's a countable thing. When you start looking at alternate streets, like Victoria might be a countable thing, but once you start looking at aggregate over an area, it becomes like we just don't have the staff capacity to manage something.
No, but I mean, it was mentioned by the public about Victoria, and it was very successful on the strip. So I do think campaigns will comply, and it was noted. And I mean, truly, it's one of our few well-supported, basically universally liked bylaws. So let's go for it.
And so that's, so we'll bring back some discussion points, but like I say, it'll be on something more lineal than aggregate for the whole community. So like a Victoria Ave, a highway thing, probably doable, but like total numbers within the community, we've explored that and it's just too hard to manage.
Okay, no signs then? Is that what we're doing? That'll make them get out and work. Yeah. Councilor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. So a little over a week ago, I was pleased to attend a 10-year work anniversary for Galen Olsted at the Key City Theatre. So we're very fortunate to have Galen here, and so it was great to celebrate him there. In addition, last week, I was pleased to attend the open house at the Rotary Villa with the Cranbrook Rotary Club, which is the Noon Hour Club. So what a great facility, and great that Cranbrook Rotary runs that, has run it for now 50 years. So it was great to attend and see all the work that's gone into that. great example of a nonprofit group providing much needed housing. So, and the view of the creek off the little deck in the back was just lovely. So it's not your turn yet, Councillor Popoff. Coming up tomorrow, there's one item. There's a movie, The Uncharitable. This is put on by EKFH and the United Way. I believe the event starts at 6 p.m. at the Key City Theatre. So it's an excellent movie about thinking about nonprofits differently and their contributions to our community. So if anyone's available tomorrow, 6 p.m. Uncharitable, if you look it up on Facebook, you'll see all the details there. And then also this Thursday at 7 p.m., the Sunrise Rotary Club, the other Rotary Club in Cranbrook, is having a movie, Key City Theatre, 7 p.m., Thelma, and it's also End Polio Day. So it's an End Polio fundraiser. So there's a couple things for folks to do this week.
Thank you. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Ray for recognizing the Cranbrook Rotary Scott Villa. Also, the ducks that form around the Rotary or the Joseph Creek is very enticing for all the residents there. They really appreciate them. I just want to let you know that some of our Rotarians did meet with some of the council at that open house, and planted the suggestion that we have the Rotary Club are looking for a phase or 2.0 for more Rotary built seniors, hard to find social housing. So hopefully some land opportunities, and we can go forward as a Rotary Club to continue on in that tradition. And the other note was, not only did I get questions and concerns, but I see there's some emails about the new painting of 14th Avenue between 2nd and 4th Street North. Confusion. Foreign to anywhere else in Cranbrook, all the yellow lines and white lines and narrow double lines and big double lines and everything else. It's not continuous with before or after that one block. I don't know, I don't think it makes sense to anybody, and I'm fearful that someone's going to misunderstand what all the yellow and white lines are for, and there might be something serious accident-wise happening there. So if it doesn't make sense, and it's only one block of the whole town, I don't know why we did it. I don't know what it means. I think it's very confusing, and that's what other residents have told me about. Let's see if it's after the snow melts in the spring. Let's see what we want to do with it in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. Just to piggyback on that, because that was one of mine to mention, is that intersection. I know when we looked at it in the plan and to keep it a four-way, that we were doing some changes, but again, I find it bizarre that we have two bike lanes one on each side when we don't even barely have enough people riding right now to utilize one lane. I think that just that narrowed the road up a bit too much, but I'm not a traffic engineer. I just sit back and watch things. So I just wanted to mention that as well, that I think that we might need to relook at a bit of the line painting, because it is confusing on what's happening. The four ways I think is working great. There is a bit of debate about it, but overall I've heard a lot of people enjoy it. It's fast, things are moving. I think it's just the concern around the bike lanes and the road width there. So I wanted to highlight that, and also I attended the I guess the Rotary open house there as well, and saw the ducks.
Thank you. And I have nothing to report. And with that, the end of tonight's meeting. And we'll adjourn this meeting and go into closed.